So I want to thank the other trainers that are on the call with me today. Brian Phillips is the Policy Engagement Coordinator with the Hub, the West Virginia Community Development Hub. And Seth DeStefano is the Policy Outreach Director of West Virginia Center on Budget and Policy. Rick Williams, who is the West Virginia Area Director for American Friends Service Committee, will be joining us a little bit later, and he's going to be leading a portion of the training. So we set this training up as just a regular Zoom call, so it could be a conversation and a shared learning session. So we didn't want to have sort of the formality of a webinar, because we wanted to be able to have you all ask us questions and engage with the trainings. I have the speakers spotlighted, so if you want to be able to see everyone, you can expand your gallery window to be able to see everyone. But please see this as an interactive conversation. If you have questions while we're talking, please use the chat to share any questions or comments you have. We'll answer them as we're able. And if you want to speak or raise a comment while someone else is speaking, just raise your hand. We'll be able to see that, and we'll invite you to participate in the conversation. So that's kind of the technical pieces of the training this morning. And let me tell you a little bit about why we wanted to offer this training. The Hub is supporting Black Policy Day. We're very excited for the event. Black Policy Day was a huge event last year, and we expect at least, if not as many people, good Lord, at least as many people, if not more, next year. I mean, this year. So Black Policy Day should have a lot of people at the Capitol, and it's a great opportunity to meet with legislators and share with them the things you care about and talk to them about the issues that concern you. We wanted to offer a training so that everyone felt prepared for those meetings and conversations, and to allow you to ask us any questions you have about how those meetings typically go, how you can make the most of your day. So Seth, Brian, and Rick will be sharing with you a little bit of their experience working at the legislature and serving as citizen lobbyists, like all of you can be if you want to on Black Policy Day. They'll give you guidance on how the day will be organized, how you can sign up for meetings with legislators, what meetings with legislators are typically like, and just how generally to get the most out of your day at the Capitol. We are providing space this evening to practice conversations with legislators. So we'll have breakout rooms, and the breakout rooms will be organized by the topics that are in the Black policy agenda. So you'll be able to choose issues that you care about and go into breakouts and talk about those issues as sort of practice with our breakout facilitators. We'll put more information about those breakouts and how to join them and stuff in the chat, and share about that as we get to it. So at this point, I'm going to turn it over to Brian to lead us through training and conversation about an overview of the process for the day and how the meetings will run.
Thank you, Stephanie, and thanks for being here, everybody. So like Stephanie said, I mean, Black Policy Day is going to be a wonderful way in which to engage with some lawmakers and to talk about issues that matter to you and your community with them. So we're gonna have a variety of options throughout the day to engage. One of which being structured meetings. We're going to be setting up meetings throughout the day that you are able to sign up for, to go talk to a legislator and, to hopefully inspire some change. So let me scroll here. So really, what we want to start out by talking about is signups. So throughout the day, there's just a variety of activities going on. And those of you who have already registered know of some of those. There's going to be a breakfast session with just a variety of speakers. There's going to be a lot of activities for kids and the youth to get involved with. There's going to be testimonials and a Crown Act rally and all kinds of things. But directly after the breakfast session, as we move over to the Capitol and start to enjoy that space, What we're going to be doing is then moving into these legislative meetings. And before I move on and get into the specifics, I see we have a question. That would be
Do you want to
James.
ask your question?
Yeah, sure. I was just wondering if you knew if House Delegate Hanshaw was going to be able to be questioned or not.
So as far as setting up a meeting with Speaker Hanshaw, I think that's something we would all like to do, something we would really be excited to get. However, we're penciling those meetings in right now, so I can't quite answer that. At this time of the session, scheduling things more than a week out is hard to do. They're busy, sessions run longer, committees start moving, and your initial meeting may not be honored. So we're in the process of scheduling those in and getting those on the books right now. So the answer is, James, we'll see, but hopefully. So as Stephanie dropped in the link here in the chat, is the Black Policy Agenda. And for those of you who may already be familiar with it, there's really 7 key areas that is addressed in it. Economics, education, criminal justice, health, environment, food, and housing. And then the last category is legislation that's already been enacted by your state lawmakers, but it's to this day unimplemented because there's no funds to do that work. So a special, attention giving to those things that we're supposed to be doing that would help the Black community in West Virginia, but we haven't yet realized because there's no funding item there for that. So before we move on and get into some tips and tricks and some scheduling things, I'm going to encourage Stephanie here to start the poll. And really, we just want to do a baseline, poll for everybody. What are you most interested about? Have you done work like this before? And what's your comfortability level going into these activities? So we'll just give you all a second to read over those and respond here.
I'll let you know when everybody has responded or when a majority. All right, is anybody still working on the poll? There we go. You should be able to see the results now.
Yeah, of course. Thank you, Stephanie. So, as we're scrolling through here, we have a lot of people in the room who have done this before, and a lot of people who have done this, what seems to be a lot. And we even have some folks who may be a little bit nervous or aren't totally comfortable with the prospect of talking to your state lawmaker. And part of this training and what we're here to tell you is that's okay. One of the benefits of having a citizen legislature is the fact that these are, normal people. They hold other jobs outside of the Capitol. They're in your communities. You may have mutual associations, and, that's something that makes participating in this process in West Virginia a little bit more accessible. These aren't full-time politicians. These are folks who go down to Charleston for 2 months a year. And that's all we have during the legislative session. So I know it can be a little bit intimidating, but it shouldn't be, because these are just folks just like you who do this work. And Seth's heard me say it a couple of times, but my go-to phrase is, that's just Jeff. Once you're in the room and you familiarize yourself with these folks, you'll realize that it's not very intimidating at all. Well, in fact, a lot of the times they're very interested in hearing about your issues and may even know of something similar that's happened. Thank you. So, moving forward, I think we should talk about scheduling. So the breakfast session of Black Policy Day, and I'm sure most of you here are already registered, we'll start at 7:30, and there will be a bunch of speakers and all sorts of fun events. And then for 9 o'clock is when we move to the Capitol, and that's when things get a little exciting. So for those of you who are here, we're going to encourage you to sign up for a time slot. When I was answering James' question earlier, I had, said that we're penciling these meetings in still. We don't know who will be at what time, and that may change as the week goes on, and that's okay. But there is opportunities to do this throughout the day. Copy and paste here. So Stephanie, if you could drop that link in the chat, that would be wonderful. So what we've done for this event is created a sign-up sheet where you are able to select where you'd like to, when and where you'd like to participate. There's a lot of other things going on throughout the day, and you're able to choose a meeting time that works best for you. So between 9 and 11 o'clock, we're going to have groups going every half hour with some help from Seth and some of the folks in the room to help get us where we need to go. But there's just a variety of options. You can attend one and then come back later in the day. That is at your discretion. But we encourage you to use the link that Stephanie had dropped in the chat if you're interested in joining us for this. Yes, James, question?
Yeah, so I talked to the Reverend also from the Tuesday morning group while I was there. And he was there talking about some COVID relief stuff, I think was what he was there about. But he said that he had a bill that he was wanting me to look at that he was going to be talking about, I think, at the Black Policy Day. And he never did send me anything. I was wondering if you might know what he was talking about, which bill he's talking about.
I'm sorry, James, I do not know what bill Reverend Watts may have been referencing, but there are a multitude. So after this, let's try to connect you with whomever that may be, can steer you in the right direction there. So, we encourage you to use that link to sign up, to pick a time and, to choose how you wish to engage. We just ask that when you fill it out, you include your name, your phone number, and your email. That way we can contact and coordinate with you. And make sure that works efficiently there. In that morning, prior to those meetings starting, we will meet by the information desk in the Legislative Rotunda here. And for those of you who may have seen Crystal Good's legislative tour in Black by God, it's where she stores her coat. And we'll make sure that resource is shared with everybody. That way they can familiarize themselves with the Capitol a little bit, and get a feel for what you will be presented with the day of. The marble is big, it's loud, it's a little cold, but once you know where you're going, getting around the building isn't so tough. The buildings are large for a reason, and it's meant to throw you off a little bit, but just know that there are resources to make that easier and to help you get around. So before I kick it over here to Seth, what I thought we would do is just do a little bit of learning together, what these meetings look like, what some best, common practices are, and how we recommend you, go into those. So, there are a variety of activities that you're going to be doing throughout this day. You're going to have the ability to go to the Senate and the House of Delegates and watch the proceedings for the day. You're going to be able to write postcards and to directly engage with your legislators through direct action items, letting them know you're there and the bills you care about. But what we're doing here today is getting you ready for a one-on-one meeting with your legislator, where we will go to them in their offices and we will discuss items on the Black policy agenda that are important to us with them. And hopefully educate them and encourage them to advance some legislation that we all care about. So just a couple tips going into these meetings, and this is what we'll be practicing in our breakouts a little bit later today. some message delivery tips and things to keep yourself on track and to ensure you have a successful meeting. One is to identify yourself. Chances are you'll be doing this work and walking around the Capitol with a couple people who wish to speak on the same issue you do. So, a good, practice is to introduce yourself, introduce the others in your group, and special bonus points if somebody in your group happens to be from that member's constituency, if they're from their district. Another good tip is to be specific about your ask. If you are going to meet with the chairman of the health committee, it may not be a good idea to lead that conversation with things that have to do with criminal justice or other matters. So, to not only know your audience, but be specific about, your ask and, why you are there in front of them today. So if I am meeting with a legislator who happens to be on the Judiciary Committee, where the Crown Act currently sits, I would say, thank you for your time, Mr. Chairman. I am Brian Phillips. I am a resident of Mon County. I'm your constituent. I'm here to talk to you today about the Crown Act. And then I would, list all of the things that I know about it, the things I know to be true, and go from there. But it's also very important to remember to be polite and to be patient during these. The legislative session gets very busy, and especially at Black Policy Day, as we move closer to the end of the year, things are going to be busy. We may schedule a half hour and you may get 20 minutes, you may get 15 minutes. Or the issues you're talking about may not be of common knowledge to that representative that you're discussing that with. So it's okay to say, you may hear that your delegates say, "Oh, I'm sorry, I don't know about that piece of legislation." And that's a great opportunity to educate them, to say, "Well, delegate, senator, what have you, this piece of legislation impacts communities in your district or in the state by X, Y, and Z." Which is a great opportunity because normally a lot of their conversations are based on the priorities of the day, and the ones that fall through the cracks don't get a lot of attention. So this is a great opportunity. It's also important to not deliver ultimatums. That can get tricky, and it may, negatively impact the legislation or your priority item when you're walking in there. And something that, is a good rule of thumb just in life, but also in these meetings, is to be truthful. If you're asked a question about that piece of legislation and you don't know, or they ask for specific data about a region or a county, you don't know that, it's okay to say, "I'm sorry, delegate, chairman, whoever you may be, I don't know that, but I can find that out for you." Or, "I'm not quite familiar with how this would impact X, Y, and Z, but I can follow up." And it's also important to leave materials with them. We're going to have a lot of copies of the Black Policy Agenda and other materials to support the event. And a lot of members already have these, but it's very important to leave those as an anchor for them to consider and to mull over moving through here. So those are just some common sense tips and tricks moving into these meetings to keep in mind that will whether the content information is the same or not will help to moderate these and to move them smoothly. And I encourage you to keep these all in mind as we move forward into the breakout sessions, where we'll be practicing some pitches, hearing from some of y'all, and also just answering questions and providing feedback on what you hope to get out of these meetings and what you may be nervous about or want some more knowledge on. So thank you everybody for coming today. And I will kick it over to Seth to.
Before we move on,
Yeah.
I have a question. I want to see if anybody else has questions too. So, do you have an example of what an ultimatum might be? So people know what you mean when you're saying don't give up.
Sure. Yeah, thanks, Stephanie. I think that's a great question. An ultimatum is anything where you're forcing that lawmaker to draw a hard line, or you're drawing that line where you say, if you do not vote for this bill, Delegate Stephanie XYZ, or if those hard interactions that make progress on these bills that much more difficult.
Does anybody else have any questions for Brian? Okay, great. Let's pass it over to Seth.
Awesome. Thank you so much to the Hub. Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Dr. Smith, and everyone for having me. I'm very excited to participate in another Black Policy Day, which I think is going to be even bigger and even better than last year. So let's talk a little bit about making the most of our time for about 10 minutes ish. You know, that space between 9 a.m. and 11 a.m. Is some of the most important space to really make an impression on lawmakers and to set up the opportunity for continued relationships. And I say this coming from a place of someone who's lobbied for on and off more than 13 years. You know, the most important time for a lobbyist, and that's not even just like people that get paid to do it professionally, citizen lobbyists too. The most important part of the day is the morning before lawmakers go to the floor. Being able to reach them on a human level, being able to get commitments, not just for the bills that you're working on, but commitments for follow-up, right? That is the time to really do it. That doesn't mean that there aren't opportunities after they come off the floor. But once lawmakers come off the floor, they have, you know, they're hungry, they're cranky because they haven't eaten. They have committee meetings out the wazoo. They have people all up in their business left and right. It becomes a lot harder to compete for that time. So the first thing I want to encourage all of you to do is be on time for breakfast and be ready to get through security through the door once breakfast is done, so you can get to these meetings starting at 9, whatever you sign up for, no matter what it is. On that note, the entrance to the Capitol that you are going to walk through, the X-ray that they use to like scan your bags is currently broken and will not be fixed for a couple of weeks. So they have to search all bags by hand. So I implore you to keep it light, travel light on Black Policy Day, right? You know, overwhelming backpacks and things like that, you know, things that are not needed, just leave them to the side. You know, ultimately, you know, and I've noticed this because we don't want to be late, right? Like we don't want to be late for meetings. We don't want to create too much of a backlog, but we may need to maybe shuffle some people to California Avenue entrance to make sure that we're getting everyone to meetings on time. We'll deal with that when the time comes. You know, a successful meeting with your lawmaker, Brian really went over the basics, and he's absolutely right. One of the things I want to reinforce is that, you know, don't look at questions you can't answer as a roadblock to your goals. Look at them as an opportunity for follow-up. 90% of lobbying lobbying anybody, is follow-up and looking for excuses to follow up. And so if somebody asks you a question you're not sure about, and actually, to be honest with you, sometimes even if I do know the answer to a question, someone asks me, if I really know that I have to keep this conversation going, I'll tell them I don't really know and just use that as an excuse to follow up with them, right? Like it is always good to have a good reason to follow up with lawmakers with their questions. You know, when lawmakers are asking you questions, well, what about this? What about this? That means you are on the path to winning, right? That means that they value your opinion more than some other, you know, person out there that's trying to push something negative, right? We want them asking you questions. We want them believing that you are the experts, because ultimately you're the one with the lived experience. So just a couple of things to think about in the meeting itself, right? You know, ultimately, you know, these meetings can go anywhere between 7.5 minutes to sometimes 45 minutes to an hour. You never really know how it's going to shake out. You know, if a lawmaker really gets interested, you could sit there and talk for a while. Other times you might have to, you might have to make the case pretty quickly. In either case, it is always best and it is paramount that someone in that meeting group who is personally impacted by the issues at stake open things up, right? I am not the guy to talk about why the Crown Act is important. I understand why the Crown Act is important. I really do, but I'm not the person who should like open up that conversation, right? That's not for me to do. People who are personally impacted by that issue are the ones who need to lay it out for a lawmaker as to why this is important, because they're like the same with housing issues, the same with criminal law reform issues. Like it doesn't matter what the issues are, but the person who kicks the meeting off, it is really important that those people be people who are directly impacted by those issues, because they can draw a straight line between, the lack of a policy solution in the status quo and what a policy solution would mean for West Virginia. I firmly believe that. Within your lobbying teams, you also need to have someone who is keeping an official record of the meeting. And I don't want to diminish this, but somebody has to step up and take notes. Somebody absolutely has to do this. And if you want productive meetings and you want productive follow-up on your issues, somebody has to be dealt. And this person basically just doesn't speak at all, right? They're introduced, when you're doing introductions, but they're the ones responsible for, this person said this person, the ask was this, the commitment was this. When you're going over how to strategically follow up, this becomes very, very important. And I think lawmakers take meetings a lot more seriously when they know somebody is there actually taking a recorded record of events. I believe that is very, very important. To double down, don't make threats. I classify that in the same space as ultimatums. Sometimes our lawmakers drive us crazy. Sometimes their lack of understanding or what you might feel is a lack of or lack of willingness to understand might make you a little bit upset. Don't let it get the better of you. Really don't. Sometimes, I believe that you are going to have some amazing conversations, and I believe personally on Black Policy Day, you are going to push the needle and push the needle for positive policy change. But if you take a meeting with someone and it just clear it's a lost cause, sometimes, occasionally, it's best just to shake hands, thank them for their time, and move on to the next meeting. Right? Just understand that sometimes that is going to happen. From there, we are going to try to keep everyone as busy as possible between 9 and 11. If you find yourself with a little bit of time before 11, it would be great, and it's always great, I do this every day, to go hang out right in front of the chamber where certain lawmakers have to walk in the door, right? So like at 11 a.m., lawmakers have no choice but to figure out a way to get to the House chamber or the Senate chamber, and their options for entering those buildings are limited. Like there's really only like 3, right? They can walk in through the front door, which most of them do. They can walk in through the side door on either side of the east wing or the west wing, or the other side door to each chamber. If you find yourself maybe the 11:30 or excuse me, the 10:30 meeting, if the 10:30 meeting doesn't quite work out, or if it ends early, perhaps, hustle on down to the front of the chamber, and you can find, the lawmakers stick out. They all have a pin, like right on the lapel of their jacket. And if you see one walking around, don't be shy about walking up and introducing yourself. A lot of times I have found over the course of doing this for a while, those quick meetings where they don't necessarily have the opportunity to talk to you in depth can lead to the next big meeting, right? The next follow-up meeting, which is in fact the meeting where things really start to happen. And with my last couple of minutes, I just want to say, please don't forget about the value of booking that follow-up, right? And so when we get into these meetings, depending on the state of play when it comes to certain bills, certain asks around Senate Bill this might be different from certain asks around House Bill that, right? But on top of those asks, really, don't be afraid to get another meeting on the books, right? And with those, those meetings in the hallway and those meetings that, you catch this person here, you catch that person there, don't be shy at all about saying, I know you don't have a lot of time. I know the speaker rang the bell. You got to go into the House chamber, but my name is, Aaron Sussman, and I would love to talk to you about this. And here's my number. I really want to get a meeting with you on the books. And you will be surprised how many people will do it for you. And that concludes my 10 minutes about how to make the best of your time. Thank you so much, Dr. Smith, Brian, Stephanie, for having me. It is always an honor to come in and talk about these things. And I'm really looking forward to Black Policy Day.
Thank you, Seth. And, to follow up on something that Seth had said a moment ago, if you hear that bell ring and those lawmakers are like, sorry, I'm cutting you off, I have to go. You are free to employ, something called the walk and talk. Don't worry, delegate. I will walk with you here. There's going to be a variety of opportunities throughout the day to just casually see your lawmakers in the halls. So, the same rules apply, the politeness, the introduction, all of those things. But there's going to be these spur of the moment opportunities for you to engage in that sort of advocacy. And we encourage you to take those throughout the day because you never know what meaningful interactions might come from that. And now we'll take some time here to introduce our next speaker who I just see came on, which is Rick Wilson with American Friends Service Committee. Thanks for coming, Rick.
Thanks for the invitation. Of course, my internet cacked out right about the time I was supposed to get on this call, but it's good to be here.
Yeah, thank you, Rick. So we had just gone through some tips and tricks for some legislative meetings, and Seth had told us some meaningful ways to get the most out of your day here. So now what we're hoping to do is for you to tell us a little bit about the good, the bad, and the ugly of how meetings can go before we get into breakouts and let the attendees here ask us some questions and practice a little bit.
I'd say the deck is stacked in the favor of the bad and the ugly these days. That's the bad news from this. And it's funny, I just was on a call with the Mime Wars Museum celebrating the 5th anniversary of the educators' strike. And that was one time when there was this huge grassroots movement that came in and really changed things, swept things aside. And unfortunately, you can't manufacture those at will. I wish we could. But I guess one thing I would say, it's probably harder now to try to do legislative advocacy than it ever has been, I think. And I joke with my friend Loretta Young that we have to keep redefining victory these days. It's like, if you can make something slightly less bad, if you can block something else off. But one thing I would say, as far as trying to make these meetings work, Seth is obviously a very great expert at all this. I have to keep telling myself that people are complicated, the people we have to deal with in the Capitol. And there's something I keep thinking, if you have a problematic politician, can you get rid of them? And if you can, do it, but if you can't, you're probably going to have to deal with them at some point. And I always find it helpful to remember that some of the people who might be terrible on one issue are actually really good on others, and it's complicated. One thing that I've learned is sort of take it one fight at a time, and you kind of have to be forgiving, I guess. Not really. I mean, you can hold a grudge. I do that too, but in general, at least in public, another thing I think is good is rant early, rant often, but rant off stage. Like have a safe space where you can go and just be fun with the mouth and hiss and spit, and get it out of your system. A couple other things that I think are just real important, and that is I always try to always work with other people, but never surrender, our autonomy. So, and it's so good to always do things in coalition with people, with a wide variety of people, for the simple reason that if there are groups of people that are just like us, for example, then we all know probably the same things as the same people, but other groups know other things than other people. So I think a lot about working together. I think a lot of the most important work at the Capitol goes on at the well, where people gossip, and who does this, who does that, who's mad at whom, who would listen to whom, who's the best person to get to that person. And it's never me, but just thinking in a way, it's like sort of social mapping. If you're thinking, who are the people you need to meet? Who are the ones who could make this happen? Who could best get to them and how? And is it someone in their district? Is there some way to go around them and force other people? And just, you have to just pivot, because some things you think could just totally blow up in your face, and then other opportunities may come around. It's a lot of chaos there. Those are a few things. I mean, I could go on, but just remembering that people are complicated and your enemy on one thing could be your unlikely ally on another.
Thank you, Rick. And knowing that, these lawmakers are complicated people, and, the environment, can often be strenuous. What is, some tips or stories you have to share, for people who may be doing this for the first time, or, may be a little nervous about going into some of their first meetings with lawmakers? What would you encourage that person to do if that meeting gets a little tense, and if it gets a little heated?
I think you froze. I don't know if I froze.
I think he froze, not us.
I think so. Well, so we'll give
Can you hear
Rick
me?
a little bit, Rick.
A little bit. Yeah, sorry, bad internet. One thing my grandmother used to say about snakes is if you see a snake, they're just as scared of you as you are of them. And I think I'm not calling legislators snakes or anything, but I think the same thing may apply. They're just as scared of you as you are of them. So keep that in mind. And if you can do like any kind of homework to find out a little bit about who you're going to deal with, any kind of common ground, that could definitely be a positive thing. I have some unlikely friends.
All right.
Should
Well,
probably-
sorry, Stephanie.
I think we should probably move into the breakouts now.
Yeah, of course. So, Rick, if you can hear us, we'll pause there and come back if you rejoin us here. But what we'll do now is move into some breakout rooms to practice a little bit, and to ask some questions about what you can expect to see at these meetings, maybe on the subject matter, or the people you're likely to meet with. So Stephanie will throw a poll up, and there's an option for 2 breakout rooms here, with some folks, some of the speakers in each room, able to give you some pointers, maybe help with some language, and answer some questions. So Stephanie, if you'd like to start that poll.
It's not a poll. I'm gonna open the
Sorry.
breakout rooms, and what you'll need to do is you'll need to choose your own breakout room. And so you'll basically go down and click on breakout rooms and click one to join. One breakout room is going to talk about economics, health, food, and environment. And the second breakout room will talk about criminal justice, education, and housing issues. So you'll kind of practice talking about those issues.
Thanks,
And
Stephanie.
if you cannot get into a breakout room, just let me know and I can assign you to one.
Thank you, Stephanie. And for those who may not have used breakout rooms before, in the bottom right of your screen, you will see a little bubble pop up. And that will, give you the option to select into one. See everybody there?
Sherry, do you want me to put you in a breakout room?
Yes, please. I'd like the economic, food, and environment one, please.
You got it.
Thank you.
You will have 15 minutes in your breakout room. We'll come back together at 5 till the end of the hour. Okay, welcome back, everybody. Let's do just like a hear back from the facilitators. Brian, how was your breakout conversation?
Thanks, Stephanie. And it was great. We were in the middle of answering a question, so I'll get to that in the chat once I finish this here. But we talked a lot about how to use our personal narratives and different lived experiences to impact these meetings and to make policy tangible for lawmakers, as well as what to do in these meetings or in the future when we have identified a problem but are unsure of the path forward and the solutions we'd like to take.
Awesome. And Seth, how was your conversation?
It was amazing. I think that one of the things we talked about, I think we doubled down a lot on what Rick Wilson talked about when it comes to both working in coalition and seeking out partners who you have, number one, you have common ground with, but also who are doing work at the Capitol that you care about. Because the bottom line is if you're interested in healthcare and you're interested in the disparities between health outcomes between white West Virginians and Black West Virginians, there are people working on that right now. And so a lot of times, I think what we discovered in our breakout room, it's a matter of making those connections. If you're interested in criminal law reform and you want to talk more on that issue, there are folks from a grassroots level, and there are lobbyists at the Capitol doing that. If you want to talk about environmental justice and you want to talk about those type, there are people out there doing that, and they want to know you because you are the actual power, right? You're the one that can get on the phone and say, I am constituent so-and-so, and this issue really matters to me, and I want to talk about it. And that is the kind of thing that every government affairs program really needs in order to be successful. At the end of the day, we're just a couple of schmoes who can go to the Capitol every day and talk to lawmakers. The people they really care about are the ones who can come and educate them from a personal perspective, and who also can legitimately brand themselves as constituents. So we had a lot of fun with that.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing that back. Thanks everyone for participating in the breakouts. I could see who was speaking when, and it was kind of cool to see that a lot of different people were talking. So just as a final closeout and reminder, we are going to be scheduling meetings with legislators this week. That is standard. And as Brian mentioned before, they probably would have forgotten about the meetings if we would have scheduled them earlier. You can go ahead and sign up in our spreadsheet for meeting slots. You can also indicate when you sign up if there's a specific legislator that you're interested in meeting with, and we will reach out to that legislator and ask them for a meeting. Meetings will be from 9 to 11 on Black Policy Day, and there'll be information for people who sign up about where to meet and how that will all go. If you're interested in watching the House or Senate floor session, there will be people that will be leading groups to the chambers to watch that at 11 on both sides. And then the rally for the Crown Act is set for 1 p.m. There's tons of other stuff going on, as you are aware, if you've registered for Black Policy Day. So plan to spend the whole day with us. It's going to be really incredible. We're happy to hang on if you have any more questions. We'll stick around for a while, but we'll let anyone else who's ready to go. Thanks again for joining us. Thanks to Dr. Smith for allowing us to partner on this and provide this training. And we'll see all of you, I hope, next week at Black Policy Day. Thanks, everybody. Bye.
Thank you. Good night.